President Cyril Ramaphosa has addressed the virtual opening of the World Trade Organization's public forum today. The discussions are focusing on trade beyond COVID-19 and how it can be used to cushion the economic impact of any future crisis. I guess it's all about building resilience. I mean, coronavirus pandemic has shown us flames. Now, I'm going to discuss the role of the World Trade Organization with the director of Tutwa Consulting Group, Makokera. Catherine, good afternoon. Welcome to the Midday View. Thank you very much for joining us this hour. The President addressing the World Trade Organization, and of course, it's now being led by an African woman for the first time ever, an African at the helm of the WTO. What's the significance of the fact that the President was invited to address this forum today?
I think it was very significant, Dan. I think this is a particularly good platform for the President to get across a number of messages that South Africa has been actively pursuing in the context of global discussions, including at the World Trade Organization. The fact that he was invited reflects the effort that South Africa has been putting into WTO issues lately. South Africa with India has been leading a push for greater recognition of the need to ensure equitable access to COVID-19 vaccinations and medicines, particularly for developing countries, including in Africa. And I think that the platform that the President has just had was the perfect opportunity to keep pushing that agenda. The World Trade Organization will have its 12th ministerial conference at the end of this year, and that is the top decision-making body, if you like, on global trade issues. And South Africa would be very keen to have a decision at that meeting in December that would open up the possibilities for higher levels of production of COVID vaccines in developing countries.
Yeah, and the whole issue of IP, intellectual property, has come up quite a lot when it comes to COVID-19, and WTO will have a role to play. They will have a say there, I guess.
Absolutely. The WTO has an intellectual property and IP agreement that governs these things called the TRIPS agreement. And what South Africa and India are proposing specifically is a waiver arrangement so that the normal protections that are under the TRIPS agreement, the IP agreement of the WTO, wouldn't apply to COVID vaccines and COVID medicines. That would free up, if you like, the space for greater sharing of technology, for more opportunities for production to be more widespread.
Yeah, I mean, it's a multilateral body. Just last week, the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Naledi Pandor, hosted a webinar together with the South African Institute for International Affairs, SAIA, where they were talking about the importance of making sure that going forward, United Nations institutions are transformed, empowered in a way that everybody feels included. With the WTO, did you get a sense today that with the invitation, of course, of the President of South Africa to speak there at this opening of this particular forum, that South Africa indeed has something to put on the table globally when it comes to trade relations?
Absolutely. I don't think the President would have been invited to be the keynote speaker if that wasn't the case, quite frankly. The WTO is probably one of the more democratic of the existing global structures, if you like. It still makes its decisions by consensus. It has, of course, had a rough patch over the last few years. Before COVID, even, we saw tensions with the trade war between China and the US, and the US particularly started to undermine the power of the WTO as a multilateral organization under the presidency of Donald Trump. And so really the new Director General, Dr. Ngozi, has got quite a big road to move ahead on to try and rebuild the strength of the WTO.
Yeah, and I guess South Africa will play its part there. Thank you very much for your time, Catherine. This hour we will, of course, have another opportunity in the near future just to talk about how you're going to be building that resilience and what role can South Africa play, and the rest of our continent, of course, because coronavirus pandemic has really impacted negatively on global trade relations.